Hi guys, I'm sorry I didn't upload anything last week. Honestly, I was in school most days and I didn't get to it. However, I'm hoping it's given anybody who needed to catch up the chance to catch up. I've been marking all your essays and I'm feeding back as I'm getting them. Esme, I wrote you a message saying I couldn't find it and then I went on the next task and found it on there, so I hope you've seen my message that I've marked it and given it a grade and stuff. If you haven't managed to send me the essay yet, or you've sent it and you haven't had a response from me, it could be that it's in one of the tasks. I haven't realised which task it's in because I just have like the blue numbers of death that come up telling me how many of you have clicked on it or something. So if you haven't had a response from me, maybe try emailing it to me and just say, Miss, it's here. It's just e.hansen@williamfarr.links.sch.uk. So yeah, only if you haven't had anything back from me about your essay. Right, so how many minutes? I've got 20 minutes. I must have deleted stuff off my phone. So the last bit I read was Hyde's description of killing Danvers Carew. So it's quite an exciting bit. Now, in this book, this is the one with like the bigger font. I'm just going to kind of recap the last paragraph, which is on page 123, and it's this last one here where instantly the spirit of hell awoke in me. Now, we have read this paragraph, okay? And in this book, this one, it's page 49. Oh my God, I've got a belt on that's squeaking on my computer chair. It's over here, the purple bit where it says, instantly the spirit of hell awoke in me. So it's the last paragraph on page 49 in this one. If you've got your own edition, I'm hoping that you can just go back to the start of the paragraph. We're actually up to the bit where it says he's just taken the potion again to turn himself back into Jekyll, and it says as he drank it pledged the dead man. And I think the last comment I made in the video was something like, "Here's to you," whatever. So I am just going to quickly recap how shocking the Danvers Carew murder is. Obviously it was shocking first time round. It was described with a singular ferocity that shocked London. That's how it was described by Utterson when he's talking about it. But even when Dr. Jekyll is describing it, even he describes it as something so big it's almost impossible to describe. So that first bit says, instantly the spirit of hell awoke in me and raged. I don't remember talking about that last time and I can't believe I've skipped over that line. Or there is a chance that I did mention it and I've forgotten. But anyway, that needs to be highlighted. And actually, I think you should put that on your Dr. Jekyll page, because the idea of hell, remember, this novel is about humans. It's about our good and our bad side. And it's this pull between trying to be godly and trying to be godly people. But actually, we are descended from animals and we have this depth of rawness in us that we can't control. So it's that pull between good and evil and temptation. And the words temptation have been coming up quite a lot recently. So the idea that hell awakes in him and raged. I also think the verb raged is particularly easy to write about in an essay, for example. We've already talked about how he was like the trapped animal. He says, my devil had long been caged, he came out roaring. So the whole metaphor there of him being trapped, caged and raging. So all these emotions that you can't control. I mean, I'm sure if you've ever been in a rage, you understand it's not something you're in control of in that moment. So I talked last time about the contrasting words. So you've got glee, delirium, excess, glorying, lust, gratified, stimulated, love of life, ecstasy, gloating, lightheaded. He's absolutely buzzing off this murder. But then that is contrasted with mauled, the unresisting body. And the way that Jekyll, remember Jekyll's writing this in hindsight, Jekyll describes it as unresisting. So even when the body's down, when the guy's down, he just keeps on going and going. It's that excess of violence. He didn't just knock him out with one punch and kill him, or, you know, smack him around the head with his cane and kill him. He kept on. It was like an overkill in the actual sense of the word. So it's a real disgusting level of violence. Okay, so he kind of runs away, devising others in the future because he's got such a high from this. So Hyde had a song upon his lips as he compounded the draught, and as he drank it, pledged the dead man. Okay, so I'm going to carry on from there. The pangs of transformation had not done tearing him before Henry Jekyll, with streaming tears of gratitude and remorse, had fallen upon his knees and lifted his clasped hands to God. The veil of self-indulgence was rent from head to foot. I saw my life as a whole. Please highlight that. I followed it up from the days of childhood when I had walked with my father's hand and through the self-denying toils of my professional life to arrive again and again with the same sense of unreality at the damned horrors of the evening. He cannot believe that the child that he was, the way he was brought up, that he has just done this thing. And when he says, I saw my life as a whole, I think personally, as a reader, that this is where he goes, okay, I can't. Hyde did it, but I am Hyde. It's almost like his first acceptance that he is the same person. Whereas when he first started doing all of his adventures and expeditions as Hyde, he told himself that it was Hyde doing those things and Jekyll could rest easy. And he said that his conscience slumbered, was the expression that we had earlier in the novel, in this chapter. But now he says, I see my life as a whole. Hyde is me, I am Hyde. And he describes them as damned. Remember that language, meaning as in like damned to hell, the damned horrors of the evening. It's like his first acceptance. I could have screamed aloud. I sought with tears and prayers to smother down the crowd of hideous images and sounds with which my memory swarmed against me. And still, between the petitions, the ugly face of my iniquity stared into my soul, which I've highlighted. So this is where he is having like an epiphany, meaning like there's a moment of enlightenment, of awakening, where he's realising how terrible his soul is and he's not going to heaven and the terrible things that he's been doing. As the acuteness of this remorse began to die away, it was succeeded by a sense of joy. I've highlighted that line. The problem of my conduct was solved. Hyde was thenceforth impossible, whether I would or not. It was now confined to the better part of my existence, and oh, how I rejoiced to think it. So, because the maid who saw the murder of Danvers Carew recognised Hyde and gave the police his name, he now saying to himself, well, it's fine, it's sorted. I don't need to make the choice to not be Hyde anymore. I can't be Hyde. I cannot be Hyde because the whole of London is looking for Hyde. And if they see him, he will be arrested and hanged. So now he's like, oh, whew. So the problem's been kind of taken out of my hands. So I've highlighted that whole bit there with, and also specifically the word rejoiced, because I do feel like he's had it taken out of his hands. It's been made a lot easier for him. With what willing humility I embraced anew the restrictions of natural life. And there's lots of exclamation marks here, like he's like, brilliant! I can feel good about myself again and I can make sure that Hyde never comes out again. It's basically what he's saying. That's not me reading, by the way. That was me saying stuff. With what sincere renunciation I locked the door by which I had so often gone and come and ground the key under my heel. So this is where we as a reader go, that's why the back Hyde entrance to the house is locked and why the key is rusted and broken on the floor. Because it's the moment where Jekyll goes, I cannot be Hyde, this is it, I'm done. I'm never going out that door again. That means Hyde does not exist anymore. So it's a new paragraph if you've lost me, because I know I jump all over the place. Well done to you if you keep up with me. I mean, that just stands for in class, in life. I mean, well done. Having me for 2 years is a bit of an effort, I feel. Okay, so the next day came the news that the murder had been overlooked, that the guilt of Hyde was patent to the world, and that the victim was a man high in public estimation. So this is where the next day it turns out Hyde's been named in the press and I killed an MP, someone who's really important. It was not only a crime, it had been a tragic folly. I think I was glad to know it. I think I was glad to have my better impulses thus buttressed, which is like the things that hold up a building. So it's like, yeah, extra things to hold up his goodness and try and ward away his badness, basically. So I've highlighted this line. I think I was glad to have my better impulses thus buttressed and guarded by the terrors of the scaffold, meaning the hangman's scaffolding, where he would be hanged from. Jekyll was now my city of refuge. Please highlight that and please put that on your either Hyde or Jekyll, doesn't really matter, page. So Jekyll is now the city of my refuge. Hyde is using Jekyll because Hyde cannot be seen, therefore he has to stay in the body of Jekyll in order to be protected from the law. So when he talks about a city of refuge, that's a really good metaphor. And it is a little short soundbite, and I know a lot of students learn that one, and they use it in just about every essay that they can get it into. So Jekyll was now my city of refuge. Let but Hyde peep out an instant, and the hands of all men would be raised to take and slay him. I resolved in my future conduct to redeem the past. And I can say, with honesty, that my resolve was fruitful of some good. So here, this bit that I'm just reading is this bit with the circled green bits here. You can see there. So I've circled resolved, redeem, honesty, resolve, fruitful. So this is him having really good intentions, trying to be the good guy again. You know yourself how earnestly in the last few months of last year I laboured to relieve suffering. You know that much was done for others, and that the days passed quietly, almost happily for myself. So he's talking, when he says you, he's talking to Utterson. This letter is for Utterson. Can you still hear my belt squeaking? Yeah. So he's talking to Utterson saying, you must remember the time when I suddenly started doing loads of good and I was like the best version of myself that I'd ever been. Nor can I truly say that I wearied of this beneficent and innocent life. I think instead that I daily enjoyed it more completely, but I was still cursed with my duality of purpose. Highlight that line, circle the word cursed. There's a nice little verb there for you to be able to talk about. And the duality of purpose. So he's saying I really did genuinely enjoy helping all those people, but it didn't stop me feeling the darkness inside me that is clearly there. And unfortunately, I've kind of let it out bits, and now it feels a bit stronger and can't deny it quite as easily. And as the first edge of my penitence, remember, penitence is something that you do. If you do something in penance, it's because you've done something wrong and you have to make up for it. And again, I'd have to double check, but I'm fairly sure that that's usually used in religious terms, although I don't think it has to be exclusively religious. But he's saying that to make up for the murder of Danvers Carew, he's going to do loads of good things for society. As the first edge of my penitence wore off, the lower side of me, not long indulged, so recently chained down, began to growl for license. Okay. So the metaphor of the wild animal chained up is back. Please circle the verb chained and also the verb growl. So began to growl for license. So basically, when you've done something really bad and you do genuinely feel guilty about it and you try to make it up. Like, let's say you've not listened to your parents and done whatever it is you've done, and then you kind of come back and you help more and you unload the dishwasher and you're really like, oh God, to keep my room tidy. But then after a few weeks, you're like, you don't feel quite as guilty as you did at the time, so maybe you don't unload the dishwasher as much, and basically you just start to slip back into old patterns. It's basically what he's saying, except on a bigger scale than unloading the dishwasher. So he's saying that, the edge of his penitence started to wear off. He doesn't feel quite as guilty as he did straight after when he turned back into Jekyll. Not that I dreamed of resuscitating Hyde. The bare idea of that would startle me to frenzy. No, it was in my own person that I was once more tempted to trifle with my conscience. And it was as an ordinary secret sinner that I at last fell before the assaults of temptation. He keeps talking like he's got no control over himself. I find him really frustrating in this final chapter. So I've highlighted that bit there. He describes himself as a secret sinner, which I would say is probably trying to point the fact that most Victorian people, I'm going to go with men, but I would say people, were secret sinners. No one's perfect, no one's godly. Humans are human, so we all sin. Obviously, we're all born with original sin anyway, in a Christian context. But then when he talks about being at last fell before the assaults of temptation, to be assaulted by temptation is a very violent action towards him, as though the temptation is constantly bombarding him, and eventually he gave in to it. I mean, he's like the epitome of the frailty of man, basically. And I mean mankind. I know I can be a fierce feminist at times, but I'm talking about mankind, not a man. Okay, next paragraph then. There comes an end to all things. The most capricious measure is filled at last, and this brief condescension to my evil finally destroyed the balance of my soul. And yet, I was not alarmed. In fact, I've highlighted that last line. So this brief condescension to my evil finally destroyed the balance of my soul. And I've actually underlined the destroyed the balance of my soul, and I've put that on Jekyll's page. Because that concept of balancing out your soul, I would say, is the key theme of the novel. So I'm a good person, I do good things. Am I descended from animals? Yes. Do I have an id? Yes. But do I control my id? Yes, I do. And my superego and my ego are in control of all of that stuff. And I feel the balance of my soul is a good one. So that's a very useful phrase for you to know as well. But he says, and yet I was not alarmed. The fall seemed natural. I remember he's talking about the fall into temptation. Like a return to the old days before I had made my discovery. It was a fine, clear January day, wet underfoot, where the frost had melted, but cloudless overhead. And the Regent's Park was full of winter chirrupings and sweet with spring odours. I sat in the sun on a bench, the animal within me licking the chops of memory. Great metaphor. Please highlight that. Please put a little star next to it. Please learn that one. Goes with growl. It goes with this idea of being chained down. My devil came out roaring. All this imagery. So it's like extended through the whole final chapter here. So great imagery of the animal within me licking the chops of memory. So like, it's thirsty, it's hungry, it's literally licking its lips at the idea of the violence and the bad things that it did. In fact, I've got, I don't know if you can see it there, so this is the animal within me licking the chops of memory. I've actually got the next bit of the sentence highlighted as well, and then I've got quite a few other bits down here. Okay. Obviously, I'll tell you as we go. The spiritual side, a little drowsed, promising subsequent penitence, but not yet moved to begin. So basically, the good bit of him is like, oh, it's okay, we'll make up for it afterwards. After all, I reflected, I was like my neighbours, and then I smiled, comparing myself with other men, comparing my active goodwill with the lazy cruelty of their neglect. And at the very moment of that vainglorious thought, a qualm came over me, a horrid nausea, and the most deadly shuddering. Well, I kind of want to read on, but I also need to explain this. So when he says I was like my neighbours, he's saying that I'm the same as every other man. And he thinks about how good he's been in the last few months, when he's been a Jekyll and he's been, like, trying to make up for killing Danvers. He basically tells himself, and he describes it as vainglorious. Now, really interesting, because the word vainglorious means arrogant. It's like a hubris, Hubris, hubris. If you look it up on Google Dictionary, I would write that word down the margin, the idea that man is basically arrogant. I was going to say cocky, but it's not. It's stronger than cocky. It's a real arrogance of like, hey, I've been so good and saved so many people, so now I can do whatever I like. It's a real, like I say, vainglorious was a word that they used at the time that we don't really use now, but it's really good. But whilst he's thinking these things, whilst he's thinking about how great he's been and how he just needs one more time to be Hyde, he starts to feel sick. So remember, he's sat in the park. It's a beautiful day, and he's just sat in the park. He's not in his laboratory. He's not got his potion. He's just sitting there. So we've got qualm, horrid nausea, and the most deadly shuddering, which I have highlighted because it's all very violent when he turns into Hyde. These passed away and left me faint, and then, as in its turn, the faintness subsided. I began to be aware of a change in the temper of my thoughts. A greater boldness, highlight. A contempt of danger, highlight. A solution of the bonds of obligation, I looked down. Highlight. My clothes hung formlessly on my shrunken limbs. The hand that lay on my knee was corded and hairy. I was once more Edward Hyde. So he sat in the middle of Regent's Park wearing Jekyll's clothes as Jekyll. He starts thinking bad things and he turns into Hyde. So the clothes don't fit him, he looks ridiculous. You need that whole bit highlighted, really. The imagery of the clothes is one that's gone all the way through. And his corded and hairy hand, so it's incredibly muscular, and it's almost like an ape's hand is how it's described. And I've just written in the margin, he's lost control. So he did not take a potion. Hyde has found his way through when Jekyll's in charge. A moment before, I had been safe of all men's respect, wealthy, beloved, the cloth laying for me in the dining room at home, and now I was the common quarry of mankind, hunted, houseless, a known murderer, thrall to the gallows. Please highlight the hunted, houseless, blah, blah. So now he's openly out as Hyde, and someone will see him and recognise him because his face has been plastered all over the newspapers and everything. There've been drawings of him and whatnot. And everyone's after him. So he's pooping his pants, basically. My reason wavered, but it did not fail me utterly. I have more than once observed that in my second character, my faculties seemed sharpened to a point and my spirits more tensely elastic. So basically, I've written in the margin there, I've underlined that sentence about I have more than once observed in my second character, my faculties seem sharpened to a point. He has a survival instinct when he's Hyde, and it's like that animal survival instinct. So it's like when he's Hyde, he's kind of dithery and isn't quite sure what the right thing is to do. When he's Hyde, he absolutely knows what the right thing is for him. It's like an ultimate narcissism where it's about his survival. Him, and only him, he doesn't care about anybody else. So yeah, put survival instinct and underline that, please. Thus it came about, where Jekyll perhaps might have succumbed, Hyde rose to the importance of the moment. My drugs were in one of the presses of my cabinet. How was I to reach them? Remember, he's locked the door, so he can't go in the back door anymore. He'd have to go in the front door as Hyde, and his staff know that Hyde, they know what Hyde looks like, and they know that Hyde is a murderer, and the police are looking for him, so he cannot go home. So I'm hoping that your little brains right now are going, this must be why he ends up asking Lanyon for his help, because he needs someone else to go and get his drugs. Yes, well done if you were thinking that, because that is what's about to happen. So this is where I've actually written it in my margin here, link back to Lanyon just down this bit of the page here, okay? And this is why I love the narrative of this book, because it feels like this last chapter brings all the pieces, so you go, oh, because it didn't make any sense why he needed Lanyon. Why didn't he not just go back like he'd done every other time before? Now we know, because he's out of control and he's locked the door and he's not supposed to be turning into Hyde. Okay, how much time have I got? Oh, I'm out of time. I'm going to stop before it turns me off. So pause there, and then I'm coming straight back with another one, and I'm going to witter less, okay? Bye-bye.